Hi, good afternoon, everyone. How are you all? Good. My name's Jesper Dosena. I'm a community organizer with the Alameda County Community Food Bank. Thank you all so very much for being here today. Today for this important Senate District Candidate Forum hosted by ACCFB. We are so excited that we have so many members of the community here today that are coming together united in the belief that our voices and our votes can create real lasting change. At the Alameda County Community Food Bank, we don't just address hunger, we tackle the root causes of poverty, we tackle the root causes of food insecurity, and we tackle the root causes of food injustice. That's why we're doing and providing, that's why we're doing more than just providing food. We're engaging in voter empowerment. We're engaging in policy work and community organizing. And this forum, along with our recently published voter guide, is part of our commitment to make sure our community has the tools it needs to be educated, empowered, and active in shaping the future. We know that hunger, ending hunger, isn't just about food. It's about addressing systems that perpetuate inequality. That's why we're building relationships, educating, and mobilizing our community. And through events like these, we can activate collective action, inspiring people to come together and to fight against poverty, food insecurity, and racism. Our community has the power to demand policies that work for everyone. And today, by engaging with the candidates who want to represent us, we take more of a step forward to building the world that we want to see. Now, it is my deep honor to introduce today's moderator, a champion for food justice and community empowerment, Ezer Pamintuan, Alameda County Community Food Bank's Senior Policy Associate. Ezer has been a powerful advocate for policies that uplift marginalized voices and push for systemic change. Please join me today in welcoming Ezer to guide today's discussion with our candidates.
Good afternoon and welcome to Alameda County Community Food Bank's Candidate Forum. Today's event features the candidates running to represent Senate District 7, the California State Senate. I'm Ezer Pamintuan, Senior Policy Advocate at Alameda County Community Food Bank, and I will be serving as your moderator today. Today's forum is all about the community, whether you're here at the food bank or watching at home. This is your opportunity to meet the candidates running to represent you in elected office and ask them how they intend to tackle hunger and poverty in our community. We would like to respectfully remind the candidates and the audience that this is not a debate. This is a conversation, and our top priority is informing members of the community. We would also like to remind everyone that Alameda County Community Food Bank is a nonpartisan organization and does not endorse or oppose political candidates running for office. We request that the audience refrain from expressing their own personal support for any candidate or political party in any of their questions or comments during the forum. Here's how today's conversation will go. First, each candidate will be given 3 minutes to deliver their opening statement in alphabetical order by last name. We will then move on to a series of prepared questions that have been drafted by ACCFB staff and submitted to registrants. Both candidates have seen the prepared questions. After that, we will open it up to members of the audience, both here and watching on Zoom, to submit questions. For each question, each candidate will be given 2 minutes to answer, starting in alphabetical order by last name, and then alternating who will start thereafter. Finally, at the end of the program, each candidate will be given 1 minute to deliver a closing statement, this time in reverse alphabetical order. Both candidates have previously agreed to these terms. If members of the audience would like to ask a question, please write it down at any time on an index card which was given to you when you arrived. Raise your hand when you're done, and a staff member will pick it up. For folks watching at home, You may ask a question in the Q&A section of your Zoom webinar. Be sure to put it in the Q&A box, not the comment box. Any audience questions will be read aloud by the moderator only. Because of time constraints, we cannot guarantee that everyone's questions will be answered. Candidates, my colleague will hold up these colored signs to indicate your time remaining. Yellow means 30 seconds remaining, and red means time is up. We ask that you abide by these time limits, and they will be respectfully but firmly enforced. For folks watching at home, closed captioning is available by clicking the CC button at the bottom of your screen. In the interest of maintaining a neutral environment, I ask the audience to refrain from applause during the forum. The exception is right now, as I invite the audience to give a warm welcome to our Senate District 7 candidates, Jesse Arreguin and Jovanka Beckes. Candidates, we will begin with your opening statements. You have 3 minutes each, starting with Jesse.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you to the Alameda County Food Bank for having us. Look forward to this conversation. I'm Berkeley Mayor Jesse Arreguin. I'm running for the California State Senate because I believe the East Bay is a proven progressive problem solver that will fight for more affordable housing, safer neighborhoods, fully funding our schools, and fighting for universal health care. I'm the son and grandson of farm workers that worked in the fields of the Central Valley. So the issues of food justice and food security are deeply personal to me and my family. And growing up in poverty in San Francisco and facing eviction, I know the struggles that so many families face in the Bay Area, living paycheck to paycheck, facing housing insecurity, struggling to get by in this region. And that's why as a policymaker, I've made addressing income inequality and fighting for housing justice my top priorities. I've served the Berkeley community for 20 years, serving 4 years on the Berkeley Rent Stabilization Board, where I fought to defend rent control, strengthen eviction protections. The past 16 years on the Berkeley City Council, where I worked to raise the minimum wage, to build affordable housing, to pass our first in the nation soda tax, to address the impact of sugary beverages on the health and nutrition of our kids. I also worked to advocate for legislation to expand urban farming and urban agriculture in Berkeley, recognizing that we need to address food security in our own urban communities. And working very closely with many nonprofit organizations, including the Ecology Center, and many food security organizations in Berkeley to expand access to food for people that are struggling to survive in the city. During COVID, I'm proud that I helped author our eviction moratorium to keep our residents stably housed during the pandemic and to help raise millions of dollars to provide emergency rental assistance and resources, including expanding access to food for food insecure and housing insecure residents in our community. I'm proud to have worked with the Berkeley Food Network to not only secure a permanent home at a city property at $1 a year, but working to make that a actual regional food hub in Berkeley to centralize our food distribution and food security work in our city. And proud to have secured hundreds of thousands of dollars to help support nonprofits that do the work of providing food meals and food for people who are food insecure. We know that need has grown since the pandemic. And I think it's shameful that in the East Bay, in the Bay Area, one of the most wealthiest parts of the country, that we have people that are living in our streets, that we have people that are one paycheck away from being on the streets, like my family, that we have people that cannot afford to feed themselves, including farm workers, the people that actually pick the food that feeds us. So that's wrong. We need to fight for economic and social justice. I've been a proud, clear, consistent, unequivocal advocate for economic and social justice. And I will continue to work with Nancy Skinner, our state senator, who's given her sole endorsement to fight for these issues in the California State Senate.
Thank you. Jovanka, you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, all of you, for taking the time out to be informed voters. That's so important. My name is Jovanka Beckles. I use she, her pronouns. Those of you who don't know me, I am a Black Latina immigrant from Panama. I'm a queer woman, so I live at the intersection of so many marginalized communities. I have worked as a mental health provider for 34 years. 23 of those years has been the wraparound facilitator for Contra Costa County. I have been working in the trenches with our community. I have been working in the trenches with our babies who are suffering and struggling, not only in the community, but struggling in school, struggling in their homes. So as a wraparound facilitator, I have collaborated with so many community nonprofit organizations, social services, pardon me, juvenile hall, everything, parole, all of the providers that are needed in a family's life to improve the quality of life and to bring about successes. And I'm really so proud that I now run into some of the babies that I started working with at 7 years old, who are now in their 20s, thriving because of the help and resources that they were able to get with my leadership and the heart that I bring in serving my community. When you said earlier, you all said that this is all about community. Well, I ran for office back in 2010 because that's who I am. I am all about the community. I ran for office despite the vitriol that I got because I knew that providing policy was the key to improving the quality of life of families in my community. I ran for office because I know what it means when we are able to elect corporate-free candidates. I have always been a corporate-free candidate. It means I take no money from any corporation, which means that I am only beholden to you all, to the voters, which means that when I take no corporate money, they don't own me, you own me. Right? And look at what's happened in Richmond. Richmond has turned around because we started electing corporate-free candidates. We held Chevron accountable, made them pay their fair share of taxes, use that money to give scholarships to our students, use that money to improve our community. Use that money, right, to make a difference. One of the things that I've done as a elected official, we brought the highest minimum wage, we brought the first rent control policy in 30 years, right? We made Richmond a sanctuary city and did some amazing things. I ask for your support because I bring heart, I bring integrity, I bring a track record of compassion based on my lived and work experience. I'd be honored to have it, and I encourage you to check out my socials to see that I am indeed saying what I.
Thank you to both candidates. And before we begin our prepared questions, I would like to remind the audience to please refrain from all side conversations during the forum. Our microphone is very sensitive, and folks watching at home might hear your side conversations rather than the candidates. Also, in the interest of neutrality, please refrain from making any audible reactions, either approval or disapproval, after any candidate makes any comment. Thank you. Candidates, we decided to start off with the hardest question. So we'll be asking you, why does hunger exist in the East Bay? And what would it take to eradicate it? Jesse, we'll start with you, and you have 2 minutes.
I'll just say that you should be moderating the presidential debate. You're doing such a great job. But I mean, I think this is really a critical question that impacts the lives of so many people in our region and really must be front and center in the work that the state legislature is focused on. I'm really proud that our state senator led legislation to guarantee 2 meals for kids in our schools. And there's been efforts by other legislators in the state, including the Avanta, to look at how we can expand the eligibility of CalFresh, integrating into our healthcare system. But really at the core of it, hunger in the East Bay is largely driven by income inequality, the high cost of housing, and systemic racism. And the cost of living leaves families such as mine with difficult choices between rent and food, between paying for prescription drugs and food. And so to address this, we need to not only strengthen the regional food system by investing in food hubs and investing in community retailers and processing facilities and supporting the work that the Alameda County Food Bank is engaged in. But we also need to expand CalFresh. It's really crazy that 66% of eligible Californians are enrolled in CalFresh. So we need to make the process easier to enroll. We need to integrate it into a lot of our social service systems. We need to expand the awareness. And it's absolutely essential that we expand access to this critical resource, which I think is also important to expanding access to food security and eradicating hunger in these days. So at the core of it, it's about how we address the larger economic challenges that we face here in the East Bay by addressing housing affordability, by preventing displacement, by raising wages, by creating good jobs, by preventing homelessness, and by investing in the social security safety net. And so when I go to Sacramento, just as I've done as Mayor Berkeley, I will fight for these values every single day and make sure that when we are deciding the state budget, that things like expanding CalFresh and expanding our social service safety net is front and center in the work of Cal.
Thank you so much. Javaka, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you for that question. Hunger, homelessness, inability to access quality healthcare exists right now, because quite frankly, we don't have political will. We have folks who are beholden to those very entities that are causing this inequality that we're seeing, income inequality, and that's why addressing income equality is the number one priority for me. And we address that in so many different ways. And, I can come up here and talk about what I'm gonna do, but I challenge you to look at my record and see what I've already done. Because what someone has done and continue to do is a good indicator of what they're going to continue to do. So income equality, by addressing that, we have made a difference in Richmond. We raised the minimum wage to the highest in the state at the time. We built, when I was on the Richmond City Council, the most affordable housing than my opponent. We have addressed housing insecurity and food insecurity. So hunger exists because we have so many food deserts in our communities. Hunger exists because we have food insecurity. And it was these things that I saw firsthand as a wraparound facilitator that made me want to run for office, because I knew that we needed policies to address these types of things. I saw families and children hungry before they went to school. So we always, in my clinic, we always had food and snacks for them when they came. So we have to have people who understand, because of their lived and work experience, what the issues are in order for us to be able to have policies that will address those challenges that we see. Everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Our second question is related to the first one, and that is, how would you describe the impact of systemic racism on hunger and poverty? And what must the state of California do to acknowledge, address, and make reparation for it? Ivanka, we'll be starting with you, and you have 2 minutes.
Well, the state we could start off by stop blocking, reparations that have been brought forward. And so there's been a lot that was killed for this session at least. That would have helped. As I mentioned earlier, I live at the intersection of all of 5 marginalized communities, Black, Latina, queer, immigrant, woman. I see firsthand the challenges that's faced. And so when it comes to addressing these issues, who better to create the policies that we need than someone who sees it and worked for 34 years with people who are struggling in all these areas. If you look at my track record, you'll see all the policies that we were able to do in Richmond. And I'm not saying because I always work with the community. All of the different policies that we did in Richmond to reduce crime, to reduce homelessness, and to reduce hunger came as a result of community collaboration. That's the only way I work, because I'm not gonna sit here and tell you I have all the answers, because I don't. Anyone who tells you they do, you might wanna think about that, right? Because none of us have all the answers. But what we do, what I bring, is an ability to listen, is an ability to see firsthand what's going on, and to work with the community and organizations like yours to write policies. All of the policies that we wrote in Richmond and that I led came as a result of sitting down with community grassroots organizations to create these policies. So when we're talking about things like Ban the Box, that for formerly incarcerated individuals, I sat down with the Safe Return Project when we wrote that bill. I sat down with ACE, Alliance for Community Empowerment, right? ACE is a group, renters advocate. And we wrote the first rent control policy in 30 years. We worked with the community to raise the minimum wage. So this is how we address it. We address it together.
Thank you so much. Jesse, you have 2 minutes.
Well, Ms. Beckles and I are in agreement. I fully support the recommendations of the State Reparations Task Force and will work with my colleagues in the state legislature to advance that full data package of policies, including creating the State Department to implement the reparations program for the state. We're in Berkeley working to implement our own reparations approach, not just at our Ashby BART station as part of a new transit-oriented development, but we are launching a whole citywide initiative around addressing reparations. And it's because we have to recognize that our society is built on a foundation of systemic racism. And it's pervasive through every single aspect of our society, including our land use policy. I'm proud that Berkeley is the first of many things. I'm not proud that Berkeley was the first city in the country to adopt single-family zoning to prevent people of color from living in expensive, wealthy neighborhoods in Berkeley. We're working to address that by expanding multifamily housing in every part of our city and affordable housing. But whether it's in housing, whether it's in criminal justice, whether it's in food security, we have to tackle systemic racism in every single way. And equity, racial equity and racial justice should be at the core of policymaking for the state of California and budget policymaking as well. That's guided the work I've done as mayor of Berkeley and will guide the work I would do as a California state senator. So no doubt systemic racism has contributed to hunger and policy in BIPOC communities by excluding them from social programs and economic opportunities. We see that here in Oakland. Black and brown communities, I'm brown, have been directly impacted by this. The Social Security Act purposely excluded agricultural and domestic workers, denying them access to critical financial support. That's another example. The USDA and federal government has had a history of discriminatory lending and subsidy programs. So every way we need to dismantle these structural barriers to racial justice and advance racial justice in our policy.
Thank you so much.
State of California.
We will now move on to the social safety net. What are your plans to improve programs like CalFresh, such as making it easier to stay on the program once enrolled? Jesse, you'll go first. You have 2 minutes.
Well, I mean, as I alluded to in my earlier comments, CalFresh's enrollment process is too complicated. We need to make it easier. So I support some of the legislative efforts that Alameda County Food Bank and your partners have been engaged in to advance legislation to make the process easier for seniors to sign up through telephone. We're trying to integrate it into part of Medi-Cal, looking at how we can integrate the enrollment process through existing social services so that you don't have to go through a separate process to sign up. 66% of eligible Californians are enrolled. The national average is 77%. We could do better as a state. So we have to simplify the application process. We need to raise benefit levels because the cost of food, the cost of goods has increased. And we need to make sure that everyone, regardless of their citizenship status, is able to get food. And we need to increase awareness of these services and definitely want to work in partnership with you to achieve that on your state senate.
Thank you. Rebecca, you have 2 minutes.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I agree with my colleagues here. That the process is way too challenging and difficult for something. We have to make it easier, make it available. We have to close the language barrier, so having to where everyone who English is a second language, would be able to access the information easily. Make the information easy to access regardless of people's ability to be on a computer or maneuver a computer. We also have to make CalFresh accessible to everyone regardless of their immigration status. We have to make CalFresh that the level right now, the means test is not fair, or it really isn't conducive really to what we see here in California. Family of 4 making $39,000. That's, so if you make more than that, that's living way, way beyond the poverty level. And that should be increased, of course, because one person couldn't survive. It's very difficult to survive in California, let alone a family of 4 making $39,000. So we really have to be able to change the way that people are qualified to be able to access this. And so as your next state senator, you have an ally in me in ensuring that everyone who needs food gets it. But it's as simple as that.
Thank you to both candidates. Moving on now to an issue that affects many Bay Area community members, and that is access to housing. How will you work to create and enforce policies that protect affordable housing? How will your policies help the unhoused? Javanka, you have 2 minutes.
How will right now, again, I can always give a really good answer on how I'm gonna protect affordable housing. But I encourage you to look at what I've done, what we have done together as a community in Richmond. The first thing we did was create the first rent control policy in 30 years. We were the first city to do that under my leadership on the Richmond City Council, and we continue to protect renters. Not only did I work to create policies, but because I'm not just a politician, I'm an activist, I'm a community organizer, I'm a community member, I'm a mental health provider, so I come with heart. I don't create policies, for the sake of increasing my power for the next office. I create policies because I really love my community and I love the people. If we're gonna talk, then we have to make sure that people have a place to live. And in Richmond, we really addressed that. We approved, Richmond has, more than Berkeley. We have approved more affordable housing in Richmond than we have in Berkeley. Don't believe the hype, folks. When they tell you that we just gotta build, that's what's gonna keep rents from going up. You probably have already seen the commercials. That's a lie. That is not how you help people with this uncontrollable rent control. The rent's too damn high, right? And it isn't by building, because if that were the case, Oakland and Berkeley would have the lowest rents, and they don't. And they built lots and lots of market rate housing. No, the answer isn't build more. The answer is not build more market rate housing. The answer is build more affordable housing. That is what we have to do. And I'm proud to have been able to do that as a Richmond City Council. Definitely vote in November for Prop 33.
Thank you. Jesse, you have 2 minutes.
This is obviously the main reason I'm running for state senate, is tackling the housing affordability crisis. And for me, it's deeply personal. I'm the only renter running for this seat, and I'd be one of the only renters in the California State Senate. I think that perspective is very important when issues like repealing Costa-Hawkins, reforming the Ellis Act, and how we can expand affordable housing come to the state legislature. So my lived experience as a lifelong renter, I will never be able to buy a home in the city I lived in for 22 years and represent. There's so many people in my generation who have the same experience. My experience of being addicted and facing homelessness and housing insecurity. That's deeply personal to me. That's guided the work that I've done in fighting housing justice. So what have we done in Berkeley? What will I do in Sacramento? I want to focus on the 3 Ps of producing new affordable housing. We need to make sure we have a stable stream of revenue to build permanent supportive housing. Affordable housing just doesn't grow on trees, it requires local, state, and federal subsidy. I helped author and pass an affordable housing bond, $135 million in Berkeley to build permanently affordable housing. We've been able to finance 1,000 deep restricted affordable units in Berkeley. My regional leadership at the Association of Bay Area Governments helped create the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority. I will go to Sacramento to fight to bring back redevelopment and make sure we have a stable stream of revenue to build affordable housing. We also need to protect our neighbors from displacement. And that's why we need to make sure we strengthen rent control, have strong eviction protections. I want to create a statewide universal rental assistance program, similar to what we had during the pandemic, so that people are one paycheck away from homelessness, they can get a grant and stay stably housed. And lastly, we need to protect existing naturally occurring affordable housing. I want to create a statewide preservation program to make sure we can buy buildings, make them permanently affordable, and prevent displacement in our neighborhoods. So my record speaks very clearly to being a strong advocate, effective advocate for housing justice and for affordable housing. And that's the work I want to do in the state legislature.
Our next issue, even though this is a state government race, affects the whole globe. How do you deal with climate change in terms of its contribution to hunger and food insecurity? Jesse, we'll start with you. You have 2 minutes.
Well, I mean, we're experiencing the effects of the climate emergency firsthand now with warmer temperatures, heat waves. The the effects of the climate catastrophe are having a huge impact, not just on our health and safety, but also on our food safety net as well. Climate change exacerbates food insecurity by reducing crop yields and creating hazardous conditions for farm workers that are harvesting the food. We have to address the issue of heat illness in the fields. It's incredible that 50 years later, after the creation of the United Farm Workers movement, my family was part of that. I was proud to work with Dolores Huerta to help name a street in Santa Cesar Chavez and work in the farm workers movement early on in my life. That farm workers are still facing dangerous exploitative conditions in the fields. It's unacceptable. I'm proud to be the only candidate endorsed by the United Farm Workers and Dolores Huerta because of the work I have done and will do to fight for farm workers' rights. But to combat this, we need to increase our investment in small farms. We need to expand protections of farm workers who face extreme heat and dangerous working conditions. And we need to build climate resilience into our agricultural system as key to long-term food security. We need to grow our food security safety here in our neighborhoods here in the East Bay, while we're also working with organizations like the East Bay Community Food Bank. Parts of Oakland, parts of Berkeley, parts of Richmond are food deserts. They don't have a grocery store. They don't have access to healthy produce. We have to address this issue, and definitely something I want to work on with you as your partner.
Devonta, you have 2 minutes.
We have to transition away from fossil fuel. And we're not gonna do that when we keep electing people who are taking money from the very entities that are exploiting us, taking money from the very entities that are causing global warming, and fighting communities who fight against them, like Chevron, for example. We have to transition away from fossil fuels if we're gonna have a resilient planet to live on. As you know, we're seeing more fires, we're seeing more extreme weather. We're seeing the kind of weather that is dangerous, particularly for farm workers. And so how do we do that? We have to transition into a new green economy. I believe that we help the safety of workers. We build worker housing, farm worker housing. There are so many things that can happen. I'm really proud of us in Richmond because Richmond is a food desert, right? But we didn't sit around, moping and crying. We started electing corporate free candidates, right? Who are then becoming public servants. And then what do? We invested in community organizations. One of them, for example, is Urban Tilt. You might have heard of Urban Tilt, the good work they have. I'm really happy. A couple of the kids that I work with, they're working for Urban Tilt now, and thriving there. But this is what we do. So many people, especially our children, don't understand where food comes from, and that they can actually, put their hands in the soil and grow their own food. So we have to encourage that. We have to encourage communities to have urban farms, and we invest in these urban farms. We can invest in communities having our own supermarkets, co-op supermarkets. Again, this has to do with political will.
Thank you so much. Our next question involves farming. Describe your support of farmers and sustainable farming practices, including urban farmers in the district and more rural farmers throughout the state. Devonta, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I just mentioned it. I support, urban farmers and urban farming organizations like Urban Tilt. We have that in Richmond. It's a great model for teaching our communities how to farm. And not only does a community agency like Urban Tilt teach our residents how to farm, but they also teach them how to be entrepreneurs, right? Once this food is grown, you sell them. I'm able to buy their seeds, their boxes, weekly, where it comes from the community and is distributed to the community. That's how I support urban farmers. And as well as I'd like to see that model expanded throughout the district. I give that as an example in Richmond because it's been an incredibly successful model. And I'd love to see that in more communities because as we see climate change increasing, we're not gonna be at a place where we're trucking in so much of our food, it's not a sustainable model. We have to be able to have local farms where we get our local food. And of course, that then reduces, food insecurity, but it also creates jobs, right? Good, sustainable, green jobs.
Thank you. Jesse, same question, 2 minutes.
I touched upon this in my earlier comments, so, the job of the California State Senator is a legislator. And so I want to point to my legislative record. I helped working in coalition with many nonprofit organizations and groups that do community farming, introduce citywide legislation to allow urban farming by right in the city of Berkeley. Before it was prohibited to do urban farming in residential parts of our city. And that has opened up opportunities to repurpose vacant land, to be able to repurpose it to allow for community gardens and urban farming, increasing access to fresh produce, increasing food security in our neighborhoods. And we need to support efforts like that at the state level. So the work at urban farming, community gardens is critical in creating resiliency and promoting local food production to address food insecurity, but also through our farmers markets and through the work that our government agencies do to procure produce, we have an opportunity to support local farmers and small farmers through those efforts as well. To support sustainable local farming practices, to support organic produce and cultivation. We're proud to have had 3 farmers markets for over 30 years. That play an important role in encouraging local farmers to sell their produce directly to people, to connect local farmers who struggle to actually get their produce in stores, and to support BIPOC farmers to be able to enter the food industry as well. So I think there are opportunities for the state through its purchasing power, just like we've done in the city of Berkeley, to be able to support these efforts and to look at legislation to help facilitate urban farming in communities throughout the city of California as well.
Thank you both. We will now move on to healthcare. Jesse, we'll start with you. What is your plan to impact healthcare policy for the state? You have 2 minutes.
Well, I believe very strongly that healthcare is a basic human right. And I have signed a pledge. I've been very clear that I support the creation of a universal single-payer healthcare system in the state of California. And there's a particular model that I support, which has been advanced by the California Nurses Association called CalCare. And I plan on supporting that when I get to Sacramento. There's fierce resistance to creating a universal single-payer system, but we know long-term it's actually going to help save the state money. And it's going to expand access to healthcare to everyone in the state. There are people in California who, even despite the federal and state government's efforts, are still not covered by Obamacare or by Medi-Cal. And those include documented residents, some of whom are ineligible to be covered under Medi-Cal. I support efforts to expand eligibility to Medi-Cal to everyone, regardless of citizenship status, and to increase our investment in Medi-Cal, which is why I support Proposition 35 on the November ballot to make sure we have a stable stream of revenue to help support Medi-Cal. We need to control prescription drug costs, which are once again forcing people to choose between food and paying for their prescription drugs. That's unacceptable. But food insecurity also drives chronic illness. It results in poor health outcomes. And we see this not just in Oakland, but in my city of Berkeley, where there are major racial disparities, and geographic disparities, increased early morbidity, heart disease, asthma, other types of chronic illnesses. Obviously, it's a result of systemic racism and redlining. So we need to support efforts like Assemblymember Fontes legislation to integrate medically supportive food and nutrition interventions into Medi-Cal as a permanent benefit. This would not only address food insecurity, but also improve health outcomes and reducing healthcare costs as well.
Thank you. Yolanda, same question, 2 minutes.
We have to have someone who's gonna fight unapologetically, courageously for a universal healthcare system. Of course, both of us here are stating that we support a universal healthcare system. But I encourage you to always follow the money. Look at where a candidate is getting their money from, and that will help you determine whether or not they will indeed do as they say when they get into a position of power. I'm endorsed by Healthcare for All California. because they've seen me fighting for healthcare for years and years and years. You know, I've definitely signed a pledge. But look at what's happening now in the California legislature. We have a supermajority of Democrats in the California legislature. So that would, you know, you think that, of course, since that's the case, that we should have had universal healthcare by now, and we don't. It has died every single time it's come up. It has died in a legislature that has a supermajority of Democrats. So it isn't just any old Democrat, obviously, right? It's gonna be a Democrat that's not taking the money from the healthcare, from the, you know, big pharma, right? Big businesses, because that's why we have not had a universal healthcare system yet, because we have, unfortunately, so many legislatures that are taking money from the very entities that are killing it in every single time it's come up. So we need people who not only, again, talk the talk, but walk the walk, right? Follow the money, and that's gonna always tell you who you can trust to actually do what we say we're gonna do. I'm endorsed by organizations like 350 Bay Area, Communities, CBE Action, APEN Action, Jane Fonda Climate Action. So I'm endorsed by a lot of grassroots organizations, not corporations. Thank you, Mark.
Our next issue is on immigration. Ivanka, we will start with you. What will you do to protect the rights of immigrants and ensure that everyone is fully included in the community? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, our immigrant community, of course, needs all the support that we can get. As you know, I mentioned earlier, I'm an immigrant. I came to the United States when I was 9 years old from Panama. Both of my parents are Panamanian. We all are immigrants, come from an immigrant family. So protecting the rights of immigrants is something that is, you know, close to my heart. As a Richmond City Council member, I had the opportunity and the pleasure of making Richmond a sanctuary city. I had the pleasure of writing policies that protected our undocumented immigrant community. Not only did Richmond become the first, you know, a sanctuary city, but we also ensured that our undocumented residents were able to bank and go to the library, get a library card by creating the first what we call a municipal ID program. We did that as a result of so many of our residents saying that because of their status, they couldn't get bank accounts, they couldn't get library cards. And now because of our innovation in Richmond, the state also now is allowing, right, folks that get IDs. But I believe, you know, it's a true measure of a leader, a true measure of a community individual who understands what our community needs based on lived and work experience. So I believe that, you know, you've been paying taxes, you should be able to have access to everything that makes for a healthy and thriving life in this state. So should be able to access food, should be able to access everything, you know, because you're living here, you're paying taxes, and I believe that the undocumented undocumented community should also have the opportunity to have a say in their politics by being able to vote.
Thank you. Jesse, same question, 2 minutes.
Sure. Well, before I answer the question, I just have to say that anyone can say they stand for something. What they've done and how they're able to work with other legislators to get difficult legislation passed and to secure critical victories for your community. That's the test of a true and effective legislator. And I've been able to do that in the city of Berkeley. I've been able to do that at the regional level. That's why I've been endorsed by Nancy Skinner, Buffy Wicks, Mia Bonta, Governor Gavin Newsom, majorities of the state Senate and the state assembly, because they trust me and they can work with me. They know I will be an effective colleague and collaborator to get things like immigration policy and universal single payer healthcare passed. It takes 21 votes to get anything passed in the state Senate, 21 votes in the state assembly. You got to get the governor's signature. I have the relationships with the administration and with legislators to get things done. And I will stand for our progressive values in Sacramento. But this issue is deeply personal to me. Immigration is the grandson of Mexican immigrants who immigrated into the United States. That's why I'm proud that Berkeley was the first sanctuary city in the United States. And after Trump was elected, we worked to strengthen our sanctuary city policy to say no collaboration at all with any federal immigration officials at all, absent a valid judicial warrant. I worked with organizations in Alameda County to end the practice of handing over immigrants to ICE in Alameda County jails and worked to elect Yesenia Sanchez as our first Latina woman sheriff in Alameda County. Sheriff Sanchez has given me her sole endorsement in this campaign for state senate. And we worked to create a rapid response network in Berkeley and to provide a universal right to counsel for people that are facing immigration proceedings. But obviously we need to expand access to services, whether it's CalFresh, whether it's Medi-Cal. It's shameful that people that are living in the state that are paying taxes can't get mortgages, can't get access to Medi-Cal, can't get access to CalFresh. That's unacceptable. We need to fight to expand access for everyone.
Thank you. Yolanda, same question, 2 minutes.
I think she asked.
I think that was the first one, yeah.
Okay, we will now move on to audience submitted questions. Our first audience submitted question comes to us from someone watching at home. And they asked, how long will it take to get people the much needed help they need currently? It is already extremely hard for families that are under the poverty line. Those of us with no kids that are making $30,000 to $40,000, but are nowhere near middle class, are barely getting by as well, and only qualify for very little benefits or nothing. Single adults need affordable food, healthcare, and housing as well. What will you do to change this? Becky, we'll start with you.
Sure. Well, I think we gotta do it several ways. We gotta raise wages. I do support the measure on the state ballot to raise the minimum wage, but frankly, it doesn't go far enough. And so I think key to addressing the issues of income inequality in the state are raising wages to thriving wages, making sure people have retirement security, that economic security, and also and that's why I'm proud of the support of many labor unions in my campaign for the state senate, because I've stood with working families as a legislator, and I will stand with working families in the state senate, but also addressing the cost of housing. We do need to build more housing. We do need to build more housing. Building more housing, we have a shortage of housing, will make housing more affordable long-term. But we need to focus specifically on building affordable housing and permanent supportive housing for people that are living in the streets. That's what I've done in Berkeley, and that's what I want to do in Sacramento too. And we need to make sure we can expand eligibility of healthcare and other essential services to make sure that we reduce all barriers and costs to make those universal in California. As I said, California is the wealthiest state. We're the 5th largest economy in the world. And the fact that we have such widespread poverty and economic inequality is shameful, it is unacceptable, and we need to fix that. And so who you elect from this district, the bluest district in the state of California, we need to elect somebody who understands the issues, who will get things done, and who will move the needle in helping address these major challenges and push for transformative change in Sacramento. And that's what I want to do.
Same question, 2 minutes.
We have to tax the insanely rich. The gap between those who have and those who don't have, the gap between workers and others, it's widening. Corporations are not paying their fair share of taxes. There was a time in the 40s, 50s when corporations paid over, 50% in taxes, and now they pay less than 17% in taxes. Meanwhile, the rest of us pay more in taxes than, let's say, a billionaire like Jeff Bezos. So who can you trust to create policies to tax the insanely rich? That is a candidate who's not taking their money, right? If I take money from PG&E or Uber or DaVita, unlike my opponent, if I did that, am I gonna be able to hold them accountable? Absolutely not. My opponent is endorsed by some folks, I respect. But those sort of people are the same ones who killed our opportunity to have universal health care, right? So it has to be folks that is the key, and I can't stress it enough, corporate free, people who are not taking money from corporations, look at Richmond, look what we've done. That's the key to getting the resources that we need. We have to be able to have people who are gonna protect the rights of workers to unionize. I'm a union member, I'm a Teamster. Right, so I understand the protections that we get when workers are able to unionize. We have to, and how do we tax the insanely rich? How do we tax corporations? We have to reform Prop 13. because that's pretty much how they're getting away from it. I don't know if you all have heard, Richmond just got $500 million from Chevron. That wouldn't have happened if those city council members were elected by Chevron, right? So that's how we get what we need, is we have to start electing people that are not taking their money.
Thank you. Devonta, we'll start with you for this next question submitted by an audience member. There is a difference between affordable housing and low-income housing. Will there be more low-income housing built? You have 2 minutes.
I would like to see that, of course, we have to be, and it has to be a regional, effort. It can't just be city by city. And so as your state senator, I make sure that we have a regional bond. I would be happy for us to be able to have the bond, the money that we need to build more low-income housing, more affordable, housing throughout the East Bay. And the person who posed that question is absolutely right. There is a difference between low income and affordable, housing. Because right now, to be able to qualify for affordable housing, you have to be making about $75,000 a year. And how many of us in this room can say that we would qualify? We wouldn't, right? But low income housing is really the key for us to be able to have people, to reduce the number of people who are unhoused. To be able to reduce, and what we're seeing is an increase, when we're talking about the unhoused, we're seeing an increase of people who are seniors, people who have lived and paid taxes all their lives becoming unhoused. And that's not fair. So we have to be able to build more senior housing, which would fall into the category of low income housing. And how do we do that? We can build it. There's so many different ways that we can build more low-income housing. We can collaborate with, let's say, the faith community, who often have land on their properties, right on their churches. We can collaborate with that to be able to build low-income housing. We can fund these efforts. And again, people are always saying, well, where are we gonna get the money? Well, we can have people in these positions of power who are gonna hold corporations accountable for paying their fair share of taxes. So yes, we build more low-income housing, not just through talk, but of course, through collaborative effort in the community.
Thank you. Jesse, we'll pose the same question to you.
Thank you. Yeah, before I answer the question, I thought the ground rules that we weren't attacking other candidates. And every question my opponent has made it ad hominem attacks. Let's focus on the issues. Let's focus on what we've done. Let's focus on our vision for the state. But to answer your question specifically, that's why we're here. We're here to talk about food insecurity and economic security. We need more money to build and preserve permanent affordable housing in California. Affordable housing requires significant government subsidy. As a former president of the Association of Area Governments, I've led an effort and will continue to lead an effort to get a $20 billion affordable housing bond on the Bay Area ballot. We desperately need that money. But I want to bring back a form of redevelopment to create a stable revenue source that we can actually fund affordable housing in communities across the Bay Area and the state of California. And make sure that we can preserve existing naturally occurring affordable housing to keep neighbors stably housed and prevent speculation and displacement in our neighborhoods. So we need to do this many ways. So I agree, affordable housing isn't really affordable. There's the federal definition of what is affordable, but that's not affordable to many people. And so we need to focus on increasing funding for people that are extremely low income. So a lot of the state tax credits and state funding is tied to people that are in higher incomes and not prioritizing people that are in lower incomes. And that can be done through legislation and through the state budget by making sure we prioritize people on extremely low incomes and people that are experiencing homelessness as we are investing those dollars through state tax credits and state affordable housing programs. So that will be my focus. Again, how we can deliver the resources to get affordable housing built, like we have done in Berkeley, 1,000 units in 6 years that we financed through the affordable housing bond, and the money that we've leveraged from the state and federal government. I know how to get it done. I want to do it in Sacramento.
Thank you to both. Another question submitted by an audience member. Earlier this year, Market Match, which matches CalFresh EBT to allow CalFresh recipients to purchase fresh produce in farmers markets, was on the line due to budget constraints. What would you do to ensure essential programs like this are permanent? Jesse, we'll start with you, 2 minutes.
Well, introducing legislation to make it something that is, permanently funded in the state budget. We were actually, the Berkeley City Council was considering putting our general fund dollars in to help supplement market match because we were concerned that the state was gonna cut funding. Thankfully, that did not happen. But this shouldn't be something that we have to worry about. Just like the healthcare shouldn't be something that we worry about. So I would work to ensure that there's a steady commitment of funding in the state budget for this program and to make sure we index it so that the funding increases as time progresses. Because it's absolutely critical to making sure we can expand access to food for people who are food insecure in our neighborhoods throughout the state of California.
Thank you. Javonka, 2 minutes.
I think the last part of the question was, what will I do? Could you repeat that last part, please?
Yes.
So what will I do to,
The last part of the question is, what would you do to ensure essential programs like this are permanent?
right? I will do what I've been doing, and that is putting people over profit. And that is putting the community first. That is making sure that our community have the resources through policies that they need in order to thrive, in order to have, and not just survive, but to actually live. And so, you know, the fact, I would never vote to cut for these types of cuts that affect people's ability to live and thrive. I believe that the way to do this is of course, first and foremost, electing people who have a political will, right, to do these things. And then to also to fund it. We have to invest, you know, in our community. And if you look at my track record, that's what we've done in Richmond, investing in our community, investing in the well-being, and quality of life of our community. So to reiterate, we have to have political will. We're not gonna cut these types of efforts, and services, and who will fund and invest in our community.
Thank you both. We will now move on to another question submitted by someone watching at home. What specifically are you going to do to fight crime with gangs in Oakland and overall crime in Oakland? Javonka, we'll start with you for 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, crime, no one wants to be in a community where, you know, crime is increasing. It's safety, it's core to our ability to thrive in our communities, right? So I will do what I did as a Richmond City Council member, 2 terms, and that is we have to address the root causes of crime. And what we discovered in Richmond is that these types of progressive policies that address the root causes of crime actually works. The San Francisco Chronicle, which is, can be pretty conservative, actually agreed and wrote an article that said that progressive policies work when you give them time. And so that's what you're seeing now in Richmond. They're working. By addressing the root causes of crime, we were able to reduce crime. Richmond was once on the top 10 list of most dangerous cities. We are no longer on that list because we addressed the root causes. What are the root causes? Well, you enable people who are coming back from incarceration to be able to have the opportunity to work. So that's why one of the first things I did when I was elected was to ban the box, take that question off of job applications so that people can at least have an opportunity to get an interview and talk about the skills that they have. So we banned the box, we raised the minimum wage. We created an office of neighborhood safety. We had ceasefire walks. We have, through the Office of Neighborhood Safety, engages with the community, enabled to have people put their guns down. We created an office for children and family because our young people, when young people, anybody, right? We all know when you feel hopeless, then anything goes. But when you create hope, then that's how you address crime. And unfortunately, so many cities think that the way to reduce crime is to increase police. And it's not, and Richmond is proof of that.
Jesse, we'll put the same question to you for 2 minutes.
I agree with Ms. Beckles that part of how we address the immediate issues of crime involve focusing on long-term investments and preventing crime from happening. But that's not gonna solve the immediate safety issues that neighborhoods are experiencing here in Oakland and throughout the East Bay. But I was proud to help introduce past legislation to ban the box for housing. Many people that leave incarceration can't get an apartment. And they're living in vehicles or living on our streets. That is also a barrier to people being able to get a job, stay economically secure, reduce recidivism. We launched a ceasefire program that's focused on working with gangs and working with people that are committing gun violence through focused intervention, diverting them from jails and making sure that we're preventing gun violence from happening. We need support efforts like that statewide. And I want to help provide the resources to support those efforts statewide. And also recognizing that police are not the people that should be responding to every single call that comes in. Increasingly, our police have social workers, homeless response workers, and mental health workers. We launched a specialized care unit in Berkeley that's focused on providing non-sworn public safety responders to address behavioral health, public health, and other social service calls. We need to support those efforts statewide as well. I have a public safety platform on my website, jesse.vote, that's focused on prevention, accountability, and deterrence. We have to focus on prevention, but we also need to take steps now to keep people safe. And we do need police, but the police need to come when people call. And the police need to be from the neighborhoods and the communities that they're serving. And we need to have strong accountability systems to make sure we're holding police accountable, which is why I was proud to author the charter amendment to create an independent police accountability board in the city of Berkeley and strong reforms to address racial profiling and use of force of our police. We need to also hold police accountable. That's part of the conversation as well.
Thank you. That concludes the question and answer portion of today's forum. And we'd like to give each candidate an opportunity to present a closing statement. Earlier today, Jesse started our opening statement portion. So now we will begin with Javanka to give a 1-minute closing statement.
Y'all, thank you so very much for this time and thank you for this engagement and thank you for this educational opportunity to get to know the candidates. Visit my website, JavankaForCASenate.com. Go to all of my social media and you will see that the things that I'm talking about and that I have done isn't just because I want to run for the next office. This is what I do. This is my life. This is my heart. I believe that we have to have that representation matters. I believe that. I believe that we have to have people in office who are not taking corporate money. Because as I mentioned earlier, we don't have universal health care. Why? Because those folks who killed it, voted it down, were taking money from those very entities, right, that we are fighting. And when that happens, we don't get the resources that we need. Corporate greed is important. It isn't any kind of an attack, but it is a fact that I will continue to reiterate. That's why I'm endorsed by so many
Thank you.
organizations like Rangers
Thank you so much, Javanka.
and environmental organizations.
Jesse, you have 1 minute for your closing statement.
I think the proof of any elected official is what they've done, how they've been able to demonstrate their progressive values through meaningful action. And we need a state senator that's not just progressive, but that's also effective. And that's why Nancy Skinner's been such an incredible advocate for food security and so many issues. And I'm proud to have Senator Skinner's sole endorsement in this race for state senate. She's asked me to succeed her in the state senate, along with Governor Gavin Newsom, the California Democratic Party, Attorney General Rob Bonta, Mia Bonta, Buffy Wicks, hundreds of elected officials, labor and community leaders throughout Senate District 7 are supporting my campaign because of my proven track record of fighting for economic and social justice. I'm proud of what we've done in Berkeley. 7,000 homes approved during my time as mayor, a 45% reduction in homelessness. Crime is down. We're investing in a new paradigm for public safety. These are the things I want to advance in Sacramento. We deserve to have a state senator who cares deeply about our shared progressive values and will roll up their sleeves and get things done. That's what I'll do as your next state senator.
Thank you to both candidates. I invite the audience to give the candidates one more round of applause. Well, that concludes today's forum. We would like to thank both candidates for attending and participating in this important community event. We would also like to thank our ACCFT staff members who worked hard behind the scenes to make today's forum happen, especially our event project manager, Yaro Halpern. Another special thank you goes to Beth Smoker and the California Food and Farming Network for their invaluable guidance. And most of all, we thank the audience here and at home for taking time out of your Saturday to engage in our democracy. There are many more opportunities to get involved. Log on to accfb.org/vote to check out our nonpartisan voter education resources, find your polling place, and explore our nonpartisan voter guide, where we make recommendations on ballot measures. And get involved in our advocacy work year-round by logging on to accfb.org/advocacy, where you can sign up to volunteer and be the first to hear about opportunities to write to your elected officials or attend events in Sacramento. Thank you for joining us, and from all of us at Alameda County Community Food Bank, have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.